Nearly a year after his death at the age of 54, authorities have made at least one arrest in the death of Friends star Matthew Perry. We do expect to learn more details at a news conference in Los Angeles later this morning. Perry's assistant found the actor face down in his hot tub last October. The LA County Medical Examiner says Perry died from an accidental overdose of ketamine. NewsNation's Nancy Liu is following this and joins us live. Nancy, we know the LAPD has been working with federal authorities on this case for several months.
You're right, Nicole, and we are awaiting a major news conference here at the U.S. Courthouse in downtown L.A. within the next hour. We are hearing of at least one arrest in the Matthew Perry death investigation. According to various reports, there may be multiple arrests in this case. As many people recall, Matthew Perry found dead in his hot tub back on October 28th of last year. The cause, the acute effects of ketamine. He'd been undergoing treatment for depression, anxiety, and pain, and he was under a prescribed program. However, he had received his last dose of ketamine under that program a week and a half before his death. So after the autopsy report from the medical examiner in December pointing to ketamine and the amount in his body was said to be as high as what's used for general anesthesia. So that launched the death investigation, which involved the DEA as well as LAPD. The evidence we're hearing is said to include text messages between Matthew Perry and those who delivered the deadly amount of ketamine. The ME report noted that two doctors were treating the 54-year-old actor at the time of his death. That included a psychiatrist as well as an anesthesiologist who was serving as his primary care physician. But again, we do not know who has been arrested. We are awaiting more details. We're hearing this press conference will include the U.S. attorney here, as well as the DEA, and the LAPD will, of course, keep tabs on what's happening and bring you more as soon as we get it. Nicole.
All right, Nancy Liu live for us there in L.A. Nancy, thank you. I'd like to welcome in attorney and legal analyst Misty Marris for some more legal perspective on this. Misty, thank you for your time here. First, are you just surprised at the news of at least one arrest in this case?
So we heard a few months ago that there was an investigation underway, and something that I think we can opine from the agencies involved. You have the DEA, you have LAPD. So you're talking about federal agencies working with state agency, is that they were looking at an interstate drug type operation in the course of their investigation. And we also know, Nicole, that when Matthew Perry's home was searched, telephones were taken, electronics. So that electronic footprint is the beginning to find exactly where the drugs came from and how they were distributed, how they got into Matthew Perry's hands. So after all of that and this investigation that we caught wind of a bit before, I'm not surprised to see that ultimately it's resulting in at least one arrest, because remember, anybody in that chain of distribution could be held criminally liable in this case.
So what kind of message, Misty, is this sending? I mean, going after those connected to the distribution of illegal drugs?
Well, Nicole, there's been legal theories around the country, especially in the wake of such a crisis in America relating to the use and deaths that result from drugs. And there's been a crackdown from a prosecutorial perspective to actually prosecute individuals who are anywhere in that link in the chain of distribution to an individual who overdoses. And so the level of criminal culpability will be fact specific to that individual. Are you talking about somebody who's a bit more on the smaller level with respect to distribution, or somebody who's way up there in the chain, the big fish, the person who's got an interstate scheme to bring drugs in and to distribute? So the level of legal culpability can be different depending on the individual, but the overall idea is to crack down and prevent these types of overdoses by attacking that chain of distribution.
So, and Misty, I'd like to look at this from the other side of things. Obviously, Matthew Perry died at the age of 54. He was an adult. He admitted to having struggles with addiction in the past. What role does Matthew Perry himself, how he played the role that he played in his own death, how does that factor into how things move forward? Because presumably he was requesting these drugs.
Right. So it's going to depend on what the legal theory is. So some of the legal theories could be about possession and distribution of drugs. In that case, his role in it isn't necessarily relevant to their criminal prosecution. It could be mail fraud. We saw the U.S. Postal Service is involved. Were these drugs distributed through the mail? Now, your question is very, very relevant to the extent that there are charges brought against any of his doctors or doctors that are involved who may have prescribed medication or helped him acquire medication outside. Now, we don't know if this is true. There's been some chatter in the media that perhaps doctors have been a part of this investigation or were being looked at. But in that case, you're looking at a different legal theory, potentially a manslaughter legal theory, like we saw with Michael Jackson and his doctor. Again, we don't know yet. We're waiting for this press conference. But to that extent, the defense will always be that this was an individual who took the drugs themselves. So it cuts off legal causation. The flip side of that argument is that there's a reckless disregard for a known risk. So the fact that he struggled with addiction to the extent someone in a unique position to understand that import, like a doctor, is involved, that could be a fact that prosecutors take into consideration when bringing charges. So very different legal theories we could see with individuals involved in this case.
And my last question for you, Misty. Should we be doing this with every overdose linked to illicit drugs? I think about so many families who have lost a loved one. How much does celebrity play into this?
Well, certainly we're hearing a lot more about it in this case. Every step of the way, it's been covered, and we've heard about the actions being taken by law enforcement to investigate. But in many, many cases, these investigations are happening because the ultimate goal is to break up some of these larger drug rings who are bringing these drugs into communities, distributing them. Oftentimes we see cases involving minors. And so the idea is that finding the source with that one individual, you keep pulling the string like yarn. You keep pulling that string to find the other individuals involved and hopefully cut these drug rings off at the top where it begins. So look, we're seeing a lot of attention on this one, and maybe this draws attention to this problem all over nationwide, but every single one of these cases should be investigated in the same way.
Absolutely. Maybe it will stop somebody from overdosing and another family going through this horrible loss moving forward. All right, Misty Marris, thank you.
Thank you.